What do you think about her tweets?
This is the left 101. When it doesn't go my way, it's racist, and any black man or woman involved in the process who didn't agree with them, obviously they're irrelevant. So that was the diss. Just go wah. Just complain. I mean, that's what children do. They never can accept a decision. And affirmative action the case was even being brought up because Asian Americans felt that they were not getting a fair opportunity. So rich white people didn't have nothing to do.
AOC steps forward with full force, energy bursting from her like sparks, passion burning brightly as she prepares to unleash a message she clearly believes the world has been waiting for. The entire stage seems to belong to her, at least in her mind, until suddenly, without warning, Tyrus appears, moving in with the calm swagger of a man built entirely out of razor-sharp sarcasm. In seconds, he flips her dramatic moment into a roast so stunning and unexpectedly fierce that it practically deserved its own warning label. What followed next unfolded with such jaw-dropping intensity that it felt almost too unreal to process.
When you don't have anything to talk about in terms of merit, you just blame it on rich white people. And it's been a cushion that's been allowed in this country for a long time. And now as you see more of that's the new pillow. My pillow's got nothing on the new pillow of blame rich white people, because you can rest your head on it in any argument. Bring any argument up with me, anything. Ask me any question. How are the Knicks doing this year? Well, why am I supposed to know that? I'm not a rich white person. See what I'm saying? Like,
politics has always fed on spectacle, growing stronger every time someone steps into the spotlight and turns a simple moment into a full-blown performance. Those over-the-top scenes where a person steps forward, waves their arms like they're trying out for a dramatic TV role, and convinces their supporters that history is unfolding right in front of them are the fuel that keeps the show running. Few embrace this theatrical energy as intensely as AOC. She doesn't just walk into a room, she practically bursts in, every step carrying the intensity of someone preparing to deliver the State of the Union, even if all she's doing is ordering a cup of coffee. The energy she brings makes even the smallest action feel like it's part of a national event, and she radiates so much drama that people can't help but stare as if something monumental is about to happen.
Unaffected or are completely out of touch of everything. This is a big country. Some people, regardless of high inflation, are still going to fly to go. It has nothing to do with lower class Americans who are struggling to pay bills, or people just make their decisions. It's just they're so out of touch, and they worry about other things, the wrong things like pardons and perceptions and how they're looked at, instead of like just shutting up, step out of your little bubble. Maybe close the safe spaces, walk out on this crunchy green stuff called grass, and get involved in the world and see that.
If you're enjoying this takedown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every word AOC speaks comes drenched in heavy drama, each point delivered with the urgent tone of someone warning the world that meteors might crash down tomorrow. But this time, she walked into a moment she couldn't control because the spotlight refused to stay on her and instead drifted toward the real star of the evening, Tyrus, yes, Tyrus, the man who can transform raw political tension into stand-up comedy with nothing more than a raised eyebrow, dropping punchlines that hit with the force of a full-on body blow, turning the entire atmosphere into a stage ready for laughter and leaving AOC struggling to hold on to the attention she usually commands with ease.
No, of course they didn't read the decision. And again, these are all successful men and women of color who all have educations, who are sitting on top of the mountain calling foul. Like, this is just the par for the course. It is just, what is the narrative? Oh, that's the way we're going with it? But it was nice to see white men get a break. You know what? Because you've had a rough year. They started blaming some stuff on white women. So you guys get a little bit of the feel.
And poor AOC never saw it coming, because you'd think a seasoned politician would understand the danger of overplaying her hand when a master of sarcasm was waiting just off stage. But instead, she rushed forward with absolute confidence, convinced the crowd would walk away, inspired, enlightened, and maybe even ready to plaster her face on the $10 bill, armed with statistics, dramatic pauses, and that signature expression that silently declares she has cracked the code of humanity and only I can save you. She charged ahead, with the intensity of someone's certain destiny was on her side, completely unaware that the whole setup was about to collapse into pure comedic gold.
Fastest, and we have fan mail, and I just can't listen to those Nate Silvers and these Saliza people just bites into this glorious show. AOC. What? She's kind of fun in a silly but earnest, wrong but adorable way. She's like your daughter when she comes back from her first year at Brown, full of half-baked, half opinions, in need of some gentle, patient deprogramming. But people have to realize new faces doesn't mean new ideas.
She structured her speech like it had been lifted straight from a Marvel origin story, weaving climate disasters, income inequality, and corporate greed into sweeping cinematic scenes. And as always, she placed herself at the center, as the fearless heroine standing tall against mysterious villains lurking in the shadows. And if you squinted even a little, you could almost hear the Avengers theme rising as she lifted her hand at the perfect moment, as though destiny itself had tapped her shoulder. Yet the audience only offered polite applause, not roaring, not thrilled, just that quiet clapping people give, because it feels required when someone speaks loudly enough. And while it wasn't moving or powerful, AOC still gazed across the room like she had just been greeted with a thunderous standing ovation. But the danger of exaggerated performances is they create openings, perfect setups for comedy, and that is exactly where Tyrus thrives. Because he doesn't carry binders full of statistics, or drag out stretched metaphors, or declare the world is ending to grab attention. Instead, his tool is something far sharper in the moment. Pure, unfiltered humor.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she responded to this ruling on Twitter as well. She says, if the Supreme Court was serious about their ridiculous color blindness claims, they would have abolished legacy admissions, aka affirmative action for the privileged. 70% of Harvard's legacy applicants are white. SCOTUS didn't touch that, which would have impacted them and their patrons. Does she have a point there?
She used the word ludicrous. That was cool. That was new. But again, it's the same argument. No matter what you're doing, that it's all white people's fault, and it's just such a great talking point, to the point where it's just literally, if it was a dying horse, would say please.
While AOC stacked paragraphs like bricks in a dramatic tower, Tyrus sat back like someone waiting to knock over a Jenga stack with one perfectly timed, sarcastic tap. But before reaching that moment, it's worth noticing just how intensely AOC tried to control the room, as she leaned into the microphone like it was a trusted friend and paced the stage with that overly serious stride so many politicians love, hitting her pauses like she was auditioning for a TED Talk. Yet each time she expected applause, the audience only gave that awkward half-hearted clap that says, "We're not sure if you're finished, but here's some noise," creating a scene that felt more like watching a nervous friend attempt karaoke for the first time. And the more she pushed her own intensity, the more she opened herself up to the one weapon that could slice straight through all the theatrics. And that weapon was arriving not through statistics or drama, but through the hammer of humor wielded effortlessly by Tyrus.
Introduced a fresh idea or issue in her life. The reason why she gets along with Bernie is because she's like an 80-year-old leftist in a used bookstore. I mean, she may look fresh, but she's as stale as an abandoned futon on the street. It's like, I listen to her, I go, I heard that at Berkeley in 1983. So their problem is, and the reason why they don't have any ideas is they operate on.
The irony here is that AOC depends on maintaining control, because her entire image is built on shaping the story, setting the stage, dictating the pace, and expecting the audience to follow along like devoted supporters. But humor never obeys those rules and refuses to respect pacing, structure, or a dramatic arc. Because once laughter takes over the room, the serious speechmaker loses all authority, and Tyrus sat there armed with nothing more than a slingshot of perfectly timed wit, ready to knock out the first brick and send her towering performance crashing down, creating tension, not because her words were stirring hearts, but because everyone was waiting to see what twist would arrive next. And the beauty of moments like this is that humiliation doesn't always show up loudly. It sometimes slips in quietly through perfect timing, sometimes through someone casually revealing how fragile the entire act really was. And that's where Tyrus shines, as he doesn't storm in with rage or overwhelm with outrage. He dismantles everything with something faster, sharper, and far more devastating: pure humor.
AOC is taking a break from doing nothing to get into a beef with the Twitter chief. On Tuesday, she tweeted, LMAO at a billionaire earnestly trying to sell people on the idea that free speech is actually an $8 a month subscription plan. That's a reference to Musk's plan to charge people $8 a month for verified blue checkmark status. But he hit back tweeting, your feedback is appreciated. Now pay $8.
The stage was perfectly prepared for the shift, with AOC deep in full dramatic mode, riding the high of her own performance while remaining completely unaware that the room was slowly slipping away from her grasp. As the applause faded into polite taps and the eye rolls piled higher than her talking points, and Tyrus sat there practically glowing with anticipation, wearing the confident look of someone who knows his punchline will land like a knockout blow. And when he finally leaned forward, everything changed. But the twist was that AOC wasn't even in the room to face him, which almost made the whole moment even better, because roasting someone to their face is expected. But roasting them from afar with a playful edge that makes people laugh and nod at the same time is an entirely different sport. And that's exactly how Tyrus went after AOC, as he treated her carefully staged political routine not like a bold movement, but like a late-night improv sketch that had gone on too long, delivering his first quick jab by pointing out how she can't enter any room without turning it into a full lecture about civilization being only 3 tweets away from complete collapse, turning the entire mood into a perfect setup for laughter.
Says AOC has 61% approval rating for Democrats, right? The highest of any Democrat unless they've been elected president. So if your new brand ambassador is going to be AOC, then I think it's more than just...
Tyrus joked that AOC probably rehearses in the mirror before brushing her teeth, arms waving wildly and statistics flying everywhere while her poor toothbrush sits there traumatized. And that single image alone was enough to burst the bubble of her carefully crafted stage presence. But he didn't stop there, as he went straight for her favorite habit, those dramatic metaphors she uses for everything, cutting through them with sharp, precise humor, as he teased that if she spilled a glass of water, she'd call it proof of rising sea levels, and if her Uber arrived late, it must be corporate greed at work. And if her phone battery dipped below 20%, she'd take it as capitalism failing humanity in real time. And suddenly, all her heavy comparisons stopped sounding powerful and started resembling the scribbles in an overexcited drama student's notebook. Because according to Tyrus, she could be describing her lunch order and still make it sound like she was announcing the cure for the world's problems. Yes, I'll take the avocado toast, he teased, because nothing sums up our generation's great struggle quite like overpriced guacamole. And what makes his humor so devastating is that he doesn't even exaggerate. He simply highlights what's already there: her tone, her habits, her urge to turn everyday life into a political battle. And with one bright spotlight, all the seriousness collapses into pure silliness.
explains it. They're not meant for you, right? But then you have to ask, okay, then what is this debt forgiveness? Who is it meant for? And when you look at the data, it's upper, white, middle class, liberal women. This ain't welfare, right? These are well-to-do people. It's a bribe for Democrats on the backs of plumbers, truckers, and everyone else who actually does a real job, unlike me. AOC is the symbol of the entitled sponge. She complains about student loans.
What once looked like strong leadership quickly transformed into theatrical melodrama. And once the audience saw it that way, there was no way to unsee it. So Tyrus continued by targeting her social media habits as well, because AOC treats Twitter like it's her personal presidential stage. And he joked that if the Wi-Fi ever went down in Washington, she'd probably call it the greatest attack on democracy in modern history, painting the picture of her typing furiously in all caps about a nationwide conspiracy just because her Instagram Live froze, and with that image, the weight of her message faded into pure absurdity, turning her less into a congresswoman rallying supporters and more into a comedian describing a quirky neighbor. But Tyrus wasn't finished, as he delivered an even sharper jab by pointing out the giant contradiction between her constant alarmism and her perfectly curated lifestyle, because nothing screams "the planet is burning" like showing up to a climate change photo op in a full designer outfit, creating the kind of irony that lands harder because it feels unmistakably true, and with every punchline, the seriousness of her brand cracked a little more.
She owns a French bulldog. Thanks to Cat Temp, I know everything about French bulldogs. And one thing I know, they are so expensive. They're more expensive than any college tuition. You got to take care of them. They're adorable dogs. But she owns a Tesla and she owns a French bulldog, and she wants you or your dad, the electrician, to forgive her student loan. That's BS. Turn in the Tesla. Sell the dog. Oh, I mean, $80 per theater. I mean, I made $80 in a theater, and there wasn't even a movie playing.
Wow. What do you mean?
I don't know. You know, it's no surprise. Who would go see a movie that's the opposite of entertaining? There's nothing entertaining about that. Michael Moore's colonoscopy is more entertaining than that because there's probably more twists. But it does show you how great it is to be a progressive in a liberal biased culture. She really doesn't do her job, right? She makes movies, she goes to galas, she sits for glossy butt-kissing interviews in GQ. And
Tyrus highlighted the irony that someone who constantly paints capitalism as the ultimate villain seems to navigate and benefit from it with remarkable ease, delivering a jab that cut even sharper because it echoed a truth many people quietly notice, and the sarcasm practically wrote itself as he pushed further, revealing perhaps his most biting comparison when he said, "Listening to her speeches felt like being trapped in a lecture hall where the professor lost the syllabus but refuses to stop talking, leaving you unsure where it began, totally unaware of where it's heading, yet somehow expected to take notes." And that became his shorthand for her entire style, loud, winding, and deeply exhausting. By the time Tyrus finished, the polished image AOC worked so hard to maintain had completely unraveled, shifting from something meant to inspire authority into something that looked more like an ongoing comedy bit, as every dramatic gesture, every sweeping metaphor, and every intense warning about the end of the world suddenly became perfect fuel for laughter and quick punchlines. And the true humiliation wasn't that she had been confronted or forced into a defensive corner, but that her entire persona had been quietly redefined in front of the audience, because what once aimed to project power now resembled pure parody. And once the room saw her through that new lens, once they connected those dots, there was no return, no reset, no recovering the seriousness she tried to command.